The ring in the photograph. After a long day filled with meetings, Luca Walser returned to his office to catch his breath and asked his secretary for a cup of coffee. The window of his office framed one of Lucerne's most beautiful views, embracing both the mountains and the lake. At times, he could not tell whether he was looking through a window or into the canvas of a renowned painter. Although more than 30 years had passed since the end of the Second World War, the effects of the economic downturn that followed were still felt, if only faintly. For this reason, Mr. Walser devoted himself entirely to preserving the existence of the company he owned, pouring all his time and energy into his work. As he sipped his coffee, exhausted, the desk phone rang. It was his daughter, Laura. For her university education, Laura had chosen Zurich rather than distant metropolises, despite her father's financial means. Her attachment to her family made even the short distance between these two neighboring cities feel long and difficult to endure. Spring had offered its colorful gifts to nature, and they were talking about the vacation they would take together in the summer. Laura gave her father the good news that she would come to visit her family for a week before her exams began. Mr. Walser needed to share this news with his wife immediately. Days before Laura's arrival, preparations would begin at their estate, her favorite meals planned, her room cleaned, and her most beloved clothes placed neatly in her wardrobe, ready for her return. Mr. Walser had not yet finished his coffee when he hung up the phone and began gathering his belongings. He took one more look at Laura's photograph on his desk and left the building. At the door, he informed his waiting driver of a few places he needed to stop by before going home, and they set off. Laura was studying art history at university. She had been deeply enchanted by the unparalleled history of Italy, where she had spent her childhood. Whenever she found the opportunity, she frequently visited museums displaying famous works of the Renaissance period and never grew tired of observing the historic buildings of that era. The magic of these cities was different for her. Traveling to cities filled with history and mysticism in Europe, Asia, and even the Far East was, for her, more than a vacation. It was an education, an opportunity for spiritual growth. Her family always wanted her to be safe. Although their worries sometimes kept them awake at night during Laura's solo travels, the sound of her voice on the phone after her return lifted the entire burden of anxiety from their shoulders. At times, Laura would return home without notice, and with the ringing of the doorbell, not only their daughter but also joy, hope, and happiness would enter the house. Alongside her studies, Laura took great happiness in visiting nursing homes for the elderly and shelters for orphan children. Whenever possible, she worked with charitable organizations, taking pride in providing both material and moral support to those in need. Her contact with many philanthropic businesspeople known through her father was always for this reason. She never hesitated to work like an angel of goodwill, bringing together associations that funded aid organizations with those who needed help. This quality of hers manifested itself in every environment she entered. At times, she felt that her efforts were still insufficient and searched for ways to touch more lives. She paid particular attention to homeless individuals struggling to survive in the area where she lived alone. They had grown so accustomed to Laura's help and presence that on days she could not visit, they would worry and wait for her, just like her family did. Outside the city, there was an elderly woman Laura cared for especially. She had lost her husband and 2 sons in the war and was entirely alone. She clung to life in a wooden shack she had built with her own means in a wooded area. She loved Laura like a daughter, and on the days Laura was expected, she would clean the shack and sit outside, gazing in the direction from which Laura would arrive. During one of Laura's visits, they talked at length. As the woman spoke of her childhood, her youth, and the days she described as the happiest of her life. Laura listened eagerly, asking questions, thrilled by the opportunity to reach the most precious memory stored in the woman's mind. At one point, the elderly woman looked into Laura's eyes with a slightly embarrassed expression and said, "I am ashamed to ask you this, Laura. It has nothing to do with me, but you know I have no one else who can help." Curious about her hesitation, Laura asked what was wrong. "For some time now, an old man has been visiting me. He said he fought on the same front as my husband during the war and that he learned details about me from my husband. He knew my name, the names of my 2 sons, even where we lived before the war. At first, I couldn't believe it, but the things he told me about my husband were not unfamiliar at all." Drawing on the advice her own family had given her, Laura told the woman to be cautious during these visits. At this point, the woman voiced her request. "This old man is actually looking for a place to stay. He wanted to stay in a nursing home, but he couldn't manage it. Sometimes he sleeps at the train station, sometimes in a hidden doorway of a building. He asked if I could help him, but I didn't know what to say. Can you do something, Laura?" "Of course I can help," Laura said. "I'll speak with the director of the nursing home in the city." As time went on, Laura's exams were approaching. She tried to focus on her studies while also making plans to touch another life without missing this opportunity for kindness. One evening after returning from school, she called her family. Her mother answered, speaking eagerly about how little time remained until they would meet and how impatiently they were waiting for her. After a while, her mother handed the phone to her father. During their brief conversation, Laura once again asked whether he could seek support from his connections to help an elderly, homeless war veteran. Her father could not refuse her request and promised to help. With 3 weeks left before her exams, Laura decided to visit the elderly woman again. She bought a few things in the city for her and set out. As she approached the shack, she saw another tall man sitting outside with the old woman. "I hope this is the old man she mentioned," Laura thought. "That way, I can meet him. Who knows, perhaps I can learn about the brutality of the war years from a living witness." When the elderly woman saw Laura, she stood up joyfully and hugged her. "Look, Laura," she said. "This is the man I told you about. His name is Marcus." Marcus extended his hand and shook Laura's, looking at her with deep eyes. "They've spoken of you often here," he said. "We are grateful for your kindness and for what you do for people in need like us." "I haven't done anything for you yet," Laura replied with a smile, proudly explaining that she would speak with the relevant people about a nursing home for him and that her father would help as well. After talking for a while, Laura left and returned home. All the fatigue and hardship Marcus had endured seemed hidden in the wrinkles that stretched from his forehead across his face. She was curious about his life, yet she also thought about the importance of her university education, for which she bore responsibility. 2 weeks remained before the exams. Laura decided to pause her social activities and focus on her studies. While preparing a simple meal in her kitchen, her eyes drifted out the window. Across the street, under a streetlight, she noticed a man watching her. She parted the curtain slightly to see who it was and quickly realized it was the elderly war veteran. Thinking he might need something, she headed toward the door. Yet a troubling question occupied her mind: how did this man know the address of the place she lived? When she stepped outside, the man was gone. Assuming he had left so as not to disturb her, she returned home. During her daily walks between home and school, whenever she looked into the distance, she felt as if the old man was watching her from behind a wall or the trunk of a tree. Nearly every day, if she saw an elderly man standing far away, she thought it was him and approached quickly. Curious about this situation, she visited the elderly woman at the shack one day. She explained everything, but the woman could make no sense of it. She even said that the old man had not visited her for days. Laura considered the possibility that he had found a place to stay. There had been no news yet from the nursing home, but she was absolutely certain that she had seen him across the street while cooking. What did all of this mean? 1 week before the exams, preparations were complete at Laura's family home. Her room was cleaned, her belongings arranged, and even the meals for each day were planned. Usually, the doorbell rang on weekends, on Saturdays around noon. That Saturday, it did not ring. By evening, Laura's mother called her home, but there was no answer. Mr. Walser comforted his wife, saying, "Laura never disrupts her plans. If not today, she will definitely come tomorrow morning." That night felt endless. Though Mr. Walser tried to hide his worry, he was deeply uneasy. They woke early on Sunday and waited. Seconds, minutes, hours passed, but the doorbell stubbornly remained silent. Before evening fell, Mr. Walser called his driver and decided to go to the city where his daughter lived. His wife wanted to come, but he asked her to stay home in case Laura arrived. When they reached the city, they went first to Laura's apartment. As a precaution, Laura had given her family a spare key. When they entered, Mr. Walser called out to his daughter, but every room was empty. His eyes fell on the suitcase standing beside the bed. It was full and ready for travel, waiting for its owner. The apartment was tidy and clean, as if Laura had vanished in an instant. Hoping to find a note on the desk, Mr. Walser searched, but found no clue. Determined not to let the silence continue, he first called Laura's friends. Everyone he reached said they had not seen her for a long time. He asked everywhere, from the nursing homes she visited to her favorite pastry shops, but his efforts were in vain. Concern turned into justified fear. He quickly went to the police station and filed a report, leaving behind a photograph of Laura. He sent his driver to bring his wife and went to stay at a close friend's home. Time passed quickly, but despite citywide searches and questioning all possible witnesses, the police still found no trace of Laura. Mr. Walser used all his influence and connections. As days passed, his wife was exhausted with grief, waiting with hope for her daughter's return, praying constantly. Mr. Walser realized that this could not continue. He decided to call his longtime friend, Detective Luca Donati. Detective Donati was a retired police officer living in Milan. He was an idealist who possessed deep knowledge of his profession and, even after retirement, had continued to serve the public by opening a private detective office. "Luca, how are you, my friend? I need you urgently. Laura. She was supposed to visit us last week, but we haven't heard from her for days. Please, my friend, come here on the first train." Detective Donati suspended all his work and set out immediately. He took the first train he could find and arrived in Zurich. Late that night, Mr. Walser picked him up from the train station, and they went to the place where the detective would stay. Mr. Walser explained everything that had happened. Detective Donati told him to remain calm. "I've known Laura since she was a child. She's very intelligent and cautious. My friend, at such a young age she has traveled to so many countries. Don't worry, she will appear somewhere and come back. If she doesn't, then we will go to her. By the way, it's been a long time since I last saw Laura. Can you give me a recent photograph of her?" Taking his trust in his friend into account, Mr. Walser decided to remain calmer. He always kept a copy of Laura's photograph with him, the one that stood on his desk at the office. He handed this photograph to Detective Donati. In the photo, Laura was standing, glowing brightly in a pink dress. The pink gemstone ring her mother had given her shone vividly within the frame, almost as if it were alive. The detective studied the photograph carefully and placed it in his bag. Mr. Walser immediately arranged a car for Detective Donati to facilitate his work and settled him into a hotel. Detective Donati asked Mr. Walser and his wife to return to Lucerne. He had taken control of the situation. Using the advantage of his former profession, he began working jointly with the Zurich Police Department. During the first few days, he visited all the places Laura frequently went to and tried to gather evidence. He spoke with her university friends, the nursing homes she visited, and every place she might have gone, attempting to obtain valuable information. Based on what he learned, he contacted police departments in nearby and distant cities alike, sharing all available information. Detective Donati thought broadly, considering every possibility. He had no definitive proof that Zurich was the last city where Laura had been seen. For this reason, he also considered the possibility that she might have gone to Lucerne. He set out for Lucerne, then continued on to other cities. Yet he could not advance a single step beyond where he had started. As time passed, the disappearance began to appear in newspapers. Mr. Walser's status as a well-known and powerful businessman made the case even more significant. With each passing day, the pressure on Detective Donati increased. Was the missing person an ordinary young woman, or was she the most precious thing in the life of his closest friend, with whom he had maintained years of friendship? In order to clear his mind and think deeply in his own office, he returned to Milan. One entire day, he did not step outside his office at all. The lack of evidence was driving the detective mad. In the difficult cases he had solved in the past, he had often reached conclusions quickly despite limited evidence. There had to be a clue somewhere. But where was it? The ringing of the phone in his office startled Detective Donati. It was his friend, Mr. Walser. He was crying uncontrollably, almost screaming, saying that his daughter's body had been found outside the city. They killed her, Luca. They killed her. The detective froze. His body stiffened as he gripped the phone receiver tightly, struggling to breathe. Time had stopped. What meaning did all that effort and hope have now? His gaze fixed on a single point as he stood motionless. He bent down, opened his bag, and took out Laura's photograph. He stared at it for minutes on end. The detective had failed to keep his promise to his friend. He had not found Laura, and for the first time in his life, perhaps in the most important case of his career, he felt defeated and ashamed. After some time, Detective Donati gathered himself. He lit a cigarette and whispered to himself. There is still unfinished business. Who killed Laura, and why? Focusing on the information he had gathered from Laura's friends during his contacts in Zurich, he recalled that although they had never witnessed it themselves, they mentioned that Laura sometimes visited homeless people on the outskirts of the city. The last train from Milan to Zurich departed in the evening. He left his office quickly and headed to the train station. He sat on a bench at the station, waiting for the train to arrive. As it was close to midnight, the station was almost empty. The light descending from a lamppost behind the bench illuminated the detective's weary state within the darkness. He heard footsteps. From the shadows, he saw a silhouette slowly approaching. The steps were slow and calm, and the figure was holding a white sheet of paper. Simply dressed, wearing a hooded jacket, the hood covered the person's face. Strands of hair slipped out from under the hood and fluttered in the wind with each step. The figure approached the detective and extended the paper. "Sir, I try to earn money by making charcoal drawings. I noticed how thoughtful and tired you looked from a distance. I drew a picture of you in that state. I hope you like it. Would you like to take it and support me?" the girl asked. As she extended the paper, the bright pink gemstone ring on her finger caught the detective's attention. How could someone trying to earn money this way possess such an expensive ring? Although the detective could not fully focus on what the young woman was saying, he took a few coins from his pocket, handed them to her, and placed the white paper into the inner pocket of his jacket. The girl walked away calmly in the direction she had come from. During the journey, Detective Donati leaned his head against the train window, lost in thought. How would he face his friend, Mr. Walser? What could he possibly say to him? While Mr. Walser and his wife were the ones who needed consolation, who would console him? In the early morning hours, the train arrived at Zurich station. He hurried to the police station, eager to learn everything that had happened. When he arrived, Mr. Walser was waiting at the door. They embraced silently, holding on to each other. Mr. Walser explained that Laura had been sent to Lucerne for burial arrangements and asked the detective one final time to find the person responsible. "I will find him, my friend." The detective informed the police chief of the detail he had previously obtained from Laura's friends. The chief said he was already aware of it and added that they had spoken with nearly all the homeless people living on the outskirts of the city. This was not sufficient for Detective Donati. He asked to be taken to those areas personally. The police chief and Detective Donati set out together and began checking all the locations once again. When they reached a fork in the road, they saw a wooden shack with its door slightly ajar. The detective said he wanted to stop and check it. As they approached the door, the same elderly woman came out. She was surprised when she saw the police car. The police chief introduced them and explained why they had come. He said that any information she could provide to help find the murderer of the young woman would be invaluable. The elderly woman said she had heard about the incident and was deeply saddened by it. While they were speaking, Detective Donati handed Laura's photograph to the woman. "The young woman who was murdered is this girl. You might have seen her somewhere. Does she look familiar to you?" Upon seeing Laura's photograph, the elderly woman collapsed where she stood. When she came to, she explained that Laura had visited her frequently and that she could not understand who would want to harm someone so pure-hearted. The elderly woman told the detective and the police chief everything she knew in full detail. They did not want to push her further, as she was still under the shock of what she had learned. On the way back to the police station, Detective Donati focused on one detail the elderly woman had mentioned. Who was the elderly war veteran she had spoken of, the one Laura had also met, and where was he now? That evening, the detective went to his hotel to rest. He laid out all the documents and information from his bag on the table and began reviewing them. At one point, he wanted to smoke, but he could not find cigarettes in his bag or on the table. As he searched his jacket pockets, he found the white sheet of paper the hooded girl at the train station had given him. Thinking, "Is now really the time for this?" he tossed it to the side of the table. As the hours passed, his eyes drifted back to the paper. It was a bitter reminder of the night he had received the terrible news. Though he did not want to return to that moment, he felt compelled to look. When he unfolded the paper, which had been folded several times, he could not hide his astonishment. The person in the drawing was not himself. It was a charcoal portrait of an elderly man, his face drawn very closely, the wrinkles on his forehead spreading across a weary and aged expression. For a moment, the detective thought he had been deceived and assumed the young girl did this to everyone. He crumpled the paper and threw it into the trash beneath the table. The next morning, when he arrived at the police station, Mr. Walser was already there. He had come immediately after the burial arrangements to follow the investigation closely. He was seated at the police chief's desk, listening to updates on the progress of the case. The detective and Mr. Walser exchanged glances, embraced, and then sat together at a table, trying to explain all the information they had gathered. Meanwhile, all the police officers in the city continued the investigation with intense effort. As the conversation continued, the detective took Laura's photograph out of his pocket. Mr. Walser, overwhelmed by the pain of seeing his daughter's beloved photograph, could not hold back his tears. But then something strange happened. Detective Donati focused on the ring on Laura's finger in the photograph. Perhaps for the first time, he was looking beyond her face and taking in the entire image, and he was stunned. The ring looked familiar. He asked Mr. Walser about the story behind it. It was a gift her mother had given her on her last birthday, and she never took it off. Using a magnifying glass from his pocket, the detective examined the ring more closely. It was identical to the ring on the finger of the hooded girl who had drawn his portrait at the train station. He could not recover from the shock immediately, but after composing himself, he asked the police chief about the personal belongings found on Laura when she was discovered. The police chief read through all the reports but said that the ring was not among the items recovered. In fact, all the money in her wallet and several small pieces of jewelry were also missing. It was a robbery. A life had been extinguished by a deranged man for a ring and a small amount of money. In all the cases he had solved throughout his career, he had never encountered anything so mysterious, so seemingly supernatural. Could it be? Was the girl at the train station Laura? But Laura was dead, wasn't she? The dead could not return, unless it was Laura's spirit. For the first time, Detective Luca Donati found himself painfully trapped between logic and illogic, existence and non-existence, the normal and the paranormal, this world and the hereafter. How could he reach a conclusion with evidence that could not be proven, a clue that seemed to come from beyond? Lost in these thoughts, Detective Donati suddenly turned to the police chief. "Chief, do you remember the war veteran, the elderly woman mentioned in the shack?" "Yes, I remember," the police chief replied. "We don't know his name, his address, or even what he looks like." "What are you thinking?" "We know his face," said the detective. As the police chief reconsidered whether they truly had such information, Mr. Walser interjected. "That war veteran you mentioned. Laura called me a few weeks before she disappeared. She said a war veteran couldn't find a place in a nursing home and asked me to help him. Could we be talking about the same person?" As all attention converged on the same point, the detective stood up abruptly and headed to his hotel. When he arrived, the room had not yet been cleaned, and the crumpled paper he had thrown away was still in the trash bin. He retrieved it and returned to the police station, showing the face in the drawing to Mr. Walser and the police chief. "Immediately, right now, we must begin work. Anyone matching this description must be questioned." When the police chief asked where the drawing came from, the detective said, "We don't have time for that." Copies of the drawing were distributed to police officers throughout the city, and the face was shown to people and searched for in all possible areas. Before long, word came that a person matching the description exactly had been apprehended. The suspect resisted speaking and refused to answer any questions in the interrogation room. The detective and Mr. Walser watched from behind the one-way mirror, while Mr. Walser's rage and anxiety intertwined. "Are we sure, Luca? Is the face in that drawing really this man?" And if it is him, can this charcoal drawing even serve as evidence that he committed the murder? He protested, then asked bitterly, "And where did you get this drawing?" At that moment, the police chief exited the interrogation room and said that, if necessary, the questioning would continue indefinitely before heading to his office. When Detective Donati entered the chief's office, Mr. Walser was outside trying to gather information from the officers conducting the interrogation. The police chief again asked about the source of the drawing. Detective Donati recounted the strange encounter at the train station. The chief was equally confused and could not offer a logical explanation. So, the police chief said, "If the man in the interrogation room is the killer, and if Laura's spirit drew her murderer's portrait and brought it to you, do you think he would confess?" Detective Donati knew what he had to do. He asked the police chief for permission to enter the interrogation room. Once granted, all officers were asked to leave, and the detective sat across from the suspect. Everyone watched with curiosity from behind the one-way mirror. As he spoke, the detective took Laura's photograph from his pocket and placed it in front of the elderly man. While continuing to speak, he pointed subtly with his fingertip at the pink ring in the photograph. It did not take long before the old war veteran began to sob uncontrollably. He confessed to everything in detail and admitted to committing the murder. The detective stepped out of the room, approached Mr. Walser, placed a hand on his shoulder, and said, "Laura can now rest peacefully in her grave, my friend." Mr. Walser embraced his friend, unable to hide his gratitude, and looked deeply into the detective's eyes as if to thank him. Just as he was about to speak, the detective interrupted with his final words. "You don't need to thank me, my friend. I did not solve this murder. Laura herself did."